Hi, Millie.
Hello.
Thank you for coming on to COLLAF Conversations.
My pleasure.
It's actually really nice that you're here because so far we've actually mainly had like an older generation that's been doing this with us. So it's quite nice to have like more of a peer from our generation, who's also achieved so much already in the art world to kind of talk to us about it.
Well, thank you for having me.
No, of course. So you started in the banking tech world, right?
Yeah.
So how did that then shift to art?
So I never thought, well, it wasn't ever really a thought of mine to go into the art world. I studied politics and international relations at university.
Oh, so did I.
There you go. And then I was at that sort of university where everyone was going in their second year. Well, what are you applying? Which internships are you applying to? Banking, law, or consulting?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'll do banking. So I went into investment banking because I'm really interested in numbers, and I did that for a few years at JP Morgan, and then eventually it wasn't right for me. I found that everything became quite monotonous, and it was interesting deals, but almost the same all the time. So at that stage, my grandmother had just passed, and so it really became a moment where either her 40-year career in business and what she'd built was just going to kind of flounder and fade with her, or it needed kind of restarting again. So for me, going into the art world was a passion and a project more than anything else.
Yeah. Was there anything that you learned during your time kind of in the corporate world that benefited you with the gallery that you think might not necessarily come naturally within the art world?
Yes, that's a really easy one to answer. Financial management.
Okay.
That is something that I have noticed in this current climate, with a lot of galleries closing. They're going, oh well, we expanded too quickly. We were spending too much cash in a good market. We weren't ready for downturns and so on. Financial management, I think, is the biggest takeaway from my time in banking. And obviously that's quite a cliche and simple one, but actually you need that in the arts. Even to run an arts focused business, you have to look at the market, look at expanding, look at your capabilities within the cash flow that you have as well.
For sure. And I suppose that in being in a creative industry, that can often be overlooked.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there are so many brilliant gallerists who are creatively and curatorially minded. But in order to be successful, that creative person then needs to surround themselves with at least an advisor or a group of people who can help them plan financially and strategically speaking.
Yeah.
I've done it the other way around. So I'm a great strategic thinker and a process builder. And then I've surrounded myself with others in my team who are more curatorially minded. So together as a team and a company, we can then come at it from all angles. But I'm lucky that building the business myself, I feel lucky because I have that financial understanding.
Do you think there are difficulties that female gallerists, kind of gallery directors, and females going into kind of the entrepreneurial route in the arts face more than their male counterparts?
I think so, to a certain level. I think, if you in any industry, there has been a historical patriarchal system.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about rewriting that history for today and making sure that there is more parity in the art world. Obviously, we are the first gallery, the first commercial space in the UK to solely champion female artists. And I not only did that because it's a passion of mine, but also because there is a disparity in the industry for artists. And I think that continues throughout the art world. So, it's like looking at an auction house. You might say, yes, there are so many women, more than there are men, but which are the people, which genders are at the higher positions?
Yeah, I was speaking to a friend about this who works in an auction. She was saying, even from, university stage there's way more female students than there are male,
yeah.
then as soon as you get to those higher positions, and even when you think of artists, suddenly the males just
yeah.
take over.
Yeah, and I think it's historically the case that it's been like that, and it's now about how women find their way to the top. Even as a gallery leader, I look at mega galleries and I go, well, that used to be the boys' club. That's why they're all at the top, because they all helped each other to get there. Yeah. So now how as women do we help each other to get there too?
Do you feel any pressure sort of to prove your own self versus, you know, as you said, there's sort of bigger, stronger galleries often run by men? Mm-hmm. You know, do you find it hard?
I think,
or do you see yourself kind of as a completely separate space?
I hope that Gillian Jason Gallery is doing something that is forward thinking. Mm-hmm. Not only in the fact that we solely champion female identifying artists, but also in the way I run the gallery. So, you know, looking at new markets, looking at opening up to younger clientele and emerging collectors and those sorts of things, which is happening across the market. But I'm hoping that we're always going to be at the forefront of those things. So I think that that's really important. So when it comes to kind of challenges with what we're doing, I think I have a pressure on myself to make sure that if we're going to champion art by women, we do it properly. We do the best of art by women. The moment you pick a niche, you have to make sure you are the best in that niche. And that is, I think, the challenge that we face.
Do you ever feel disadvantaged that you can't represent male artists?
You know, it's funny, when we were thinking about reopening Gillian Jason Gallery in my grandmother's name with this new focus, I went to a lot of her contacts in Modbrit and Modern British Art, and I said, this is what we're doing. And the one thing that I remember is an older gentleman saying, why would you do that? You won't make any money in art by women. And I thought that is exactly why I need to do this. Exactly. That's exactly why I'm doing it. But it rings true to the fact, yes, perhaps I do feel a little bit disadvantaged because you're not playing the easy route. But at the same time, that is the passion. And further to that, there are so many brilliant female artists. Yeah. And I often also get overwhelmed by choice. So I've cut out half the market. So if I can leave men there, and there are plenty, I mean, there's the rest of the galleries in the UK who will show up by men. Although we have a lot to do in terms of the gallery's vision and ethos to represent the best of art by women and push their careers forwards, to make sure their voices are heard, not only for emerging artists, but also for artists who didn't get their recognition in the 1970s, 80s, and so on. That is an uphill battle, but it's one that I feel needs to be led.
Do you ever find it difficult to balance, though, like the merit versus having a female artist who has a certain story because it kind of fits a storyline rather than their talent? Do you find that hard to balance?
I think that is a question that is becoming very well known when people talk about positive discrimination. Yeah, exactly. And that's the question that really we're having. The answer is no. By virtue of the fact that there are brilliant female artists everywhere you look. So I don't necessarily ever find that I'm having to diminish the quality of the work because I can't find enough women who create. Yeah. I'm quite lucky in the fact that there are lots of female artists who all want an opportunity, and I have a wealth of artists to choose from. Then I have to make sure actually that everyone is up to standard, and I do believe in what we're saying. But because we are simply providing a platform and a voice for the best of art by women, we can then create a multifaceted dialogue with a lot of different artists from a lot of different perspectives, because women are artists, and therefore when you look at the market, you're going, well, this artist is saying something widely and variably different to the next one, and the next, and the next, and so on. So everything then comes down to providing a wide platform without me having, or the gallery having to say something in particular. Mm-hmm. We just give the artist a platform to say whatever they want to talk about.
And you've spoken about emerging artists that you've been excited about that you think may have been sort of overlooked from particular regions and communities. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and the ones that you think, have been undervalued?
There are women across the world who are undervalued, and we can talk about that economically, politically, socially, and so on. There are, and I think it's always going to be the case for artists worldwide. But I'm trying to make sure that we are able to provide international exposure for the artists that we work with. So, for example, there's an artist on our roster called Millie Young, who is an extraordinary abstract expressionist artist who is completely self-taught, is from the US, didn't have the money to pursue higher education. And so when I met Milan, she was selling her canvases for a few $100s and per work, and no gallery would give her any attention or time of day because she didn't have a CV. So I picked Milan up during the pandemic, and we met online during we just met on a video call, and a collector introduced us. And just from the video call, I understood how important her work was to me, and I thought how important it would be to other people. So working with Milan, we were not only able to expose her artwork to a wider public and collector base, but also we do that on an international scale. So Milan, we've shown her now in the US, in the UK, we show her, in Asia and abroad. So I hope that Gillian Jason Gallery's focus on emerging markets also gives the artists the opportunity to expose worldwide.
When you're dealing with an artist like Milan, is it much more difficult commercially to sort of push their art forwards than, say, an artist who knows exactly the game of like the London art world, who went to the Slade and knows exactly sort of the steps to go to grow in the art world? Is it more difficult to push them forwards, or is it actually it's just purely about the talent and down to the gallery?
I wish it was purely about the talent. So my answer to your question has to be yes, it is more difficult. It's a lot more difficult to be able to position someone's work just on its brilliance. Because when you're looking at emerging artists, especially if you're looking at the London art scene, a lot of it is questions from collectors. Who's coming up next? Who's the next big thing? What school are they graduating from? So people still look at their CV. And that's a very traditional way of looking at the art world. What I'm trying to do is look at less traditional methods, look at the artist based on their talent alone, and then pushing that forwards. So then you have to start looking at, which collections will understand the work, which will want to support it and be patrons of that work and so on. But it's something that we struggle with a lot of the artists that we work with, because I don't make my life easy, but it's, going back to the question about positive discrimination. I don't want to work with female artists just because they're, the next hot thing. I want to work with people that I truly believe in the long term.
I mean, the art world kind of had this sort of stigma around it of being quite elitist, quite insular. Do you think it really is more than other industries?
I think there are two sides to that. Some people say it's not for the new generation coming up through the ranks.
Yeah.
But I still think that the art world, by virtue of the fact that art is a luxury good, is a lot more exclusionary than, let's say, finance. So finance, you come into the job based on merit, and the harder you work, the more the bigger your bonus, the more you get promoted. And so everyone at the bank, for example, was all about networking. You'd email anyone in any other division and say, can we go for coffee? I'd love to hear about what you do. And they'd say, yeah, absolutely, meet you on, the 20th floor at the coffee bar, and we'll sit and chat. In the art world, those barriers are a little bit harder. A lot of the time for, new entrants to the market, even gallery assistants looking for jobs, you can't just email and say, well, you can just email and say, I'd love to work with you. But the likelihood of getting a response versus
someone who knows someone
who recommends their kid to get a job, it's still there. for sure.
Yeah.
It's still there.
And it's funny because one could say, oh, the art world is so accessible because anyone can be an artist. You don't need to, have a certain grade or anything like that. It's just, if you want to do art, you can create art.
Yeah.
But I suppose getting into the art world is a different story.
Yeah, I think so.
Obviously, your gallery has a lot of heritage, following, from your grandma's footsteps. Have you ever felt kind of a constraint on expectations for the gallery? And how do you sort of honour the legacy that you've been given?
I don't necessarily feel a constraint by virtue of the fact that my grandmother was dealing in modern British art. It was a different market of a different era. And she really, she had her gallery between 1980 and really the turn of the millennium, the year 2000. Then she became a private dealer. And then by 2014, 2015, she had retired and wasn't really doing much at all. So the gallery reputation and name over that kind of the couple of decades really began to flounder. And what I was left with was a name, Gillian Jason Gallery, in terms of what it was. But I don't feel the pressure because I want to build it back up to what it could now be in the contemporary, in today, the contemporary day, modern day. But in answer to the second part of your question, I do want to make sure that I'm honouring my grandmother's legacy. It is, for all intents and purposes, a family business. It is something that is so important to me. And one of the reasons that we show art by women is because it actually was important to my grandmother. So although she, exhibited the greats, David Bomberg, Frank Auerbach, and so on, she also did a lot of husband and wife shows. So she would show David Bomberg and Lillian Holt together, husband and wife. Nice. And she always wanted to champion the woman behind the man. And Lillian Holt was an amazing painter in her own right. And when you go to the Tate archives today, a lot of the works that are in there by Lillian Holt have my grandmother's provenance. She worked really hard and tirelessly on behalf of these lesser known women, even in her era, in order to gain them some recognition. So every time I put on a show, I ask myself, would my grandmother be proud of this? And that's kind of really the ethos that we go on now. Would Gillian be proud of this show?
Oh, how nice. I'm assuming you obviously went to the show at the Tate. It was like 2 years ago, maybe?
Women in Revolt.
Women in Revolt.
So we were one of the main sponsors for Women in Revolt.
Oh, really?
Yes. So we worked with Lindsay Young, the curator.
She was incredible.
Incredible. And when Lindsay was planning the show, she came to us and she said, we have some artworks that we would like to restore and rebuild and recreate. By virtue of the fact that these artworks were sitting in artist studios and female artists who hadn't been able to show their works, although they were seminal at some time, there was some sitting in the basement that just had rot or damp or just needed redoing. So part of Gillian Jason Gallery's ethos now is also to work with museums and curators to make sure that female artists are being seen and heard. So 2 years ago, we sponsored Women in Revolt. This year, we sponsored Linda Sterling at the Hayward Gallery.
Oh, how great. I saw that.
Because that was her first ever UK institutional show.
Yeah.
So these things are important to us as well. It was great. And
really,
brilliant
really good show.
Yeah, so Rachel Thomas did an amazing job curating that as well.
Amazing job. Yeah, the Women in Revolt was especially, the curator said was Lindsay.
Yes.
She spent like 5 years working on that show.
She did.
And the way she spoke about it and went through like each step, like each artist, each, work was just, it was exceptional.
And it's a completely game-changing show.
Yeah, it was one of the most emotional shows I've actually been to.
Yeah.
Like it was a group of women that went, and it was just unbelievable, some of the artists that had been overlooked. And like the amount of research that she went into making sure that they were really being seen and put up an institution like the Tate was just incredible. It was
extraordinary. So that's why, in the commercial world, that's why we do what we do as well. Because these female voices are extraordinary and so many of them have been unheard or lost throughout time. So it's important.
For sure.
Yeah.
What's been your proudest moment since starting at the gallery?
That's a big question. It's more of a general one, but I think it's the team. I really love my team. There's 4 of us now, and although we're still growing and we're still small, we're a family, and I'm so proud of the team that we've built, because without them, we couldn't continuously build the gallery, put on shows, and keep going, even in a hard economy. So I think it's an ongoing proud moment.
Have you had any big setbacks that you really learned from this?
Off the top of my head, the biggest setback that I have learnt from is coming into the business where it's similar to banking. To put it very crudely, it's still a buy and sell side, right? So buying is the artist, so representing the origination, selling is the clients, and you have to be able to manage artists, the gallery, and the clients. And our job as a gallery is to match them all together. I would say that not a setback, but a big learning curve was in the beginning, learning how to work with artists. And I think my biggest learning curve was realizing that mistakes were made in communication, or showing their work, or not listening to them as much as I should have done. And that was all by virtue of the fact that building a new business is quite hard. And I was working with artists for the first time and understanding their visions and trying to match a business with a vision. And that has taken me time to learn and understand and to be able to comprehend. And I think I'm better for it, because I have mistakes that I regret in terms of losing artists that I wanted to work with in the long term, because we didn't have the same outlook, or I didn't manage to match their vision as much as they wanted to. So that's been the biggest learning curve for me. But I hope now, and I think I'm quite proud to say that I've learned from that, and I'm really proud of the artists that we have relationships with and we represent, and I hope that they would say that I do them justice.
Do you ever find it difficult when you're putting on a show to balance kind of the control over the show between the curator, yourself, and the artist, and who ultimately gets the most say?
It is a balance for sure. And I think some of those, the learning curves was finding that balance and perhaps sometimes getting it wrong. Now when we curate a show, my ideal is that I ask for the artist's ideas and input, but on the day when it comes to curation, a lot of artists feel confident in handing over their work and saying, you curate as you see fit, because as the artist, all the works are their babies. So then they start going on their favorite. Well, this one I want in prime position, and this one, and then you can sometimes get stuck, because although the artwork that is their favorite might have prime position, it doesn't work in the storytelling of the show. So then I think it's a little bit of a balance between the curatorial hat and the gallerist hat. How do we position something that is not only visually resonant, but also we make sure that there are some key artworks in some positions that people can understand, and collectors will go, yeah, I want that one. So how do you balance that? Because we want to be as curatorially focused as possible, but we're also a commercial gallery that owes a responsibility to the artist to make them some money.
Of course.
So usually now when it comes to curating, we ask for the artist's input, but we don't have them there on the day, because when it comes to curating, we can often get stuck. So then it comes down to the curator and how they want to put the show together. I think that's what's important.
For young women who are interested in entering the art world, what advice would you give them?
Knock on everyone's door, talk to everyone, build a network, and for people who want to get into the art world, actually being green and having some lack of understanding on this and lack of experience on this side, they can go to more experienced professionals and say, what would you do? How would you do this? And I've found throughout my career that people like talking about themselves.
Totally agree.
So actually, I think my advice always to young professionals looking to break into the market is contact everyone for coffee. only 10% might get back to you. But actually, that one person who takes you out for coffee, you can pick their brains about their career, their life,
Sure.
and they will give you so much knowledge that you might not be able to gain without it. And they'll also go, you reached out to me, you had the impetus to ask me about what's available. I'll put you in touch with so and so. And then you start building a network that way, and everyone wants to give you help. So I think as a young woman trying to get into the market, talk to anyone, but I hope that other women will also be their champions.
So you've started doing, which I love attending, by the way, these GJG sessions for kind of people within the art world to get together. Can you tell us a bit more about sort of that initiative and why you started it?
Absolutely. So GJG sessions was something that I wanted to start in order to allow people in and outside of the art world to engage with art and each other in a genuine way. So GJG sessions is probably somewhere between a gallery event or opening and a networking session, but it takes both of the kind of the sides of perhaps being a little daunting, and brings it to somewhere that is friendly and open. So the first GJG session, one that you came to, which was almost a trial run, was we did an opening and a dinner with Jess Cochrane, and Jess was painting a lot of items of food in her pieces, and we wanted to recreate that in real life. So we had a drawing session with Jess and with food on the tables that you could draw, and as you draw, you eat the food and you chat to others and so on, and you can also take away works.
Yeah.
And it became a moment where a lot of people became really good friends.
It was such a great session. I met so many people. I think it's such a nice idea because it obviously GJG is a commercial gallery,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the way you've managed it, you're like creating a lot more of a community behind it. And because of its messaging around, obviously supporting female artists, there is this kind of female bonding that happens with it as well, which I think is really special.
Absolutely. And thank you for saying that, because the whole point of GJG is not to just be a gallery, as it were, in the standard sense, but also to build community, to be a space where people are welcome. So we do things like we all sit front of house, because then when anyone comes in, whether they're a collector, lover of art, an artist, we can have a conversation and give them a tour. And so that ethos then feeds through to everything we do. And GJG sessions is almost like the product of that. And so it enables people to come together and have genuine connections and enjoy art.
It's so important. I mean, obviously, as you know, sort of my passion behind it is more the educational side of art and sort of people having access to art they normally wouldn't have access to, and actually understanding and learning about it. And now, unfortunately, when you go to some of these major galleries, sometimes you don't even have a sheet there. You have to ask someone behind the desk who like unwillingly will go and find it and give it to you. And like, I just think being able to walk into a gallery and have someone there who really wants to show you around and teach you about it, whether you're interested in buying or not, is so important.
And that's, I think, what a gallery should be.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.